So this is really about how we partner and how we use both marketing and communications at the center of this to co-create and co-storytell with our partners, with our clients, et cetera, about how we're transforming business by business, industry by industry. Today, every company needs to become a technology company. So our Let's Create brand initiative is really an invitation for creators all over the world to work with us. And when we think about creators, we mean developers, our clients, our ecosystem partners, communities at large, et cetera. And how can we be a convener to help solve some of the biggest and most difficult challenges? We believe that requires creativity, and we believe creativity is the new currency of business.
I have more questions on that, especially on the co-creating storytelling bit, because it might be easy to do it with partners, but how easy is it to do industry-wise when you have competing interests? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, when we think about engaging with ecosystem partners, it's really about the outcomes that we're driving for clients together. If we focus on business outcomes, then we remove some of the barriers that sometimes exist around co-opetition. And we really need to focus on client success at the end of the day. So I think that by focusing on client success, the outcomes that we drive for clients, that helps us really reorient and achieve the right focus for each business involved.
IBM has gone through a transformation with the recent spin-off. So how has communication evolved really after that development in the life of the company?
Sure. So I think after the spinoff of Kyndryl, a big portion of our business, we shifted as a business in terms of our makeup. We were previously a 70% services business, 30% software. We've now flipped that entirely. So first and foremost, the role of our teams was to bring clarity to what it is that we deliver and what it is that we stand for. So we had a pretty significant shift of the work that we did organizationally from business unit focused to campaign focused. And that meant that we broke down a lot of the silos that existed previously and a lot of the potentially conflicting storytelling, and allowed us to get much more focused on the areas that are critically important to us. I think the second piece of the spin and the shift for us was about partnerships. An ecosystem now plays a much more significant role in our go-to-market and our go-to-market transformation. And so thinking about how we both engage more deeply with partners. Some of our strategic partners are represented on the panel today, but also activate more intentionally some of our smaller partners. And by doing so, also provide them some education and enablement about what great effective communications looks like. Those have been two kind of primary areas of focus for us.
Flowing from that, Jen, what do you feel that given the PR community as a whole globally across industries, what areas do you think that they can really cooperate in? Policy, of course, is one area. Traditionally, even competitors do cooperate on policy. And what are the other issues or situations do you see? One of the feedback I got while we were planning the topic is that the younger tech companies are better at cooperating even among competitors, and the tech royalties, so to speak, are perhaps still making up their mind about that. What are your views?
Yeah, I think certainly there's something that we can always learn from newer organizations who recognize the power of partnership, in terms of how they've been created as a business. So I think there's a lot to learn there. I also think that coming together helps us think about and solve some of the bigger issues that are affecting us. So as I've been speaking with clients and partners over the past few days and week or so, a lot has kind of come to the fore that we collectively are trying to solve problems around, about return to the workplace, for example. I think we're seeing different challenges market to market about people's desire to be back in offices. And I think that we really do need to, there's no secret answer. There's no hidden answer somewhere. I think coming together to understand and solve those challenges like sustainability, et cetera, are ripe opportunities for us to co-create and sell and figure out together.
So how How do you take up storytelling in the current scenario where media is so severely restricted? Even in India, we are traditionally where we had a strong print market. We are seeing very strong contraction of space. So, given that, do you think that partnership-led stories have a better sell, so to speak, for the media as well, and there's scope in that?
I do. I mean, I think it's always critically important, as we're all aware, to make sure that we're contextual in terms of business problems, societal problems, technology problems, industry problems that we're solving. And 9 times out of 10, we're not solving them individually. We are solving them together with our partners. I also think clearly, and many have mentioned this today, we also need to think about how we leverage and tap into social media in a much more intentional way, so that we're broadening the aperture of who we engage with and how. That means social media, that means influencers, that means analysts, et cetera. So I think, certainly it's working together, but it's also how we kind of co-create social campaigns. And one for us that's been very effective in a way to represent our partnerships is actually called the Power of Partnerships. And it's focused on our ecosystem partners and the problems that we're solving for clients. And that's been a very effective social media campaign here in India, and a major area of focus for us.
Jen, my final question for you is that, just to conclude the whole partnership conversation, the whole conversation flow that we have been discussing, since you head many markets across the world, what kind of insights do you see? Are there differences between how typically the Western world approaches partnership and how the Asian world approaches partnership? Do you see any differences in that, or are they becoming less important?
I think we're seeing fewer and fewer differences in terms of how those things are approached. But I think one of the things that we're keen to do across every market in the world is ensure that as we're thinking about client storytelling and partner storytelling, we're really thinking about it from the perspective of the client as the hero or the partner as the hero. And that really shifts the dynamic quite a bit. It's not about what they are doing for us. It's about, how we really help articulate the mission and vision that they're helping to make real in the world. I love, Manal, your example of bringing your client into your story and vice versa and making it deeply personal. I think we need to think about how we do make this deeply personal for our partners and our clients, and really ensure that we're approaching storytelling through the lens of how can we make you more successful as opposed to making it about us. So to me, fewer differences around the world, but I think around the globe, an opportunity for us to be much more focused on the other's success at the end of the day.
Thank you. I love that statement of yours that, how do we make it deeply personal? One would argue that it's a uniquely Asian trait in some ways when it comes to business, but it's really interesting to see that it's being accepted as a global trait. Excuse me. Which people would like to involve people more in that way. Over to Glenn for his comment. If you can give us an APAC perspective on how do you see this whole partnership piece evolving, especially in storytelling and communication. Again, APAC is so diverse in terms of cultures and communities. What kind of differences and common ground do you see?
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I feel like this is a conversation that we're beginning to have a lot more with over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I feel like the conversation has shifted substantially. Before we were very focused on the notion of partnership, but the way we did that, I think, was fundamentally different. I think the pandemic has sort of moved us into it. Firstly, it's a accelerated digital adoption phenomenally, and I think that's changed how we go about telling stories. But it's also brought together out some of the codependencies that exist today that perhaps didn't exist in the same way previously. And I feel like that's made all of us sort of think more deeply about the conversations that we're having and the best way to have them, and sort of lifting all boats, with our communications efforts. So, for me in the region, I just feel like we're all sort of struggling with the same challenge at the moment, but the pandemic has accelerated in a way that we could never have predicted before.
Hit the nail on the head. It's all about accelerated digital adoption, and I'd love to hear more about that. I'd like to bring in Aseem for final comments, and of course, the floor is open to questions from the audience. Please put them in the chat box or raise your hand. We have a few minutes to take questions. Aseem, I'd just like to introduce Aseem. He's the head of impact measurement, data analytics firm in India. He's also the first Indian and Asian chair of AMIC, global chair of AMIC, which, as you know, is the nodal body for measurement and data for the PR industry in India. Welcome, Aseem. Before we were talking, you had some very specific examples of how cooperation is actually taking place in measurement between within firms. How do you see the evolution of partnership in your coming from your point of view, which is a data point of view?
Thank you, Parul. In fact, for this, I'm going to bring up a page. This is a photograph from the latest AMIC summit. So this has happened in Austria towards the end of May. And in this photograph, you can see I got a chance to moderate a panel wherein we talked about a successful measurement case study wherein two measurement firms got together, partnered, not just with each other. They were competitors, but they partnered not just with each other, but also with the client to create an award-winning measurement campaign. And the way they partnered with the client was that the client agreed to pass on a lot of internal data for this program to be successful. And the way they partnered with each other was they realized that there were things that each of the companies brought to the table. There was a lady called Maya Kuleva from a company called Cometric, and Ben from the measurement arm of another PR firm. And they had this wonderful example. And in that panel, I got a chance to ask them what got them together, what challenges they faced. But the overall idea was that because they partnered together, they were able to create an award-winning entry. That's the first example. And the second example is what we have seen in India all along. I'm sure you would have seen these associations wherein companies work together with competitors to take issues to the government or the policymakers. I remember when I started working in the PR space, there used to be an association called All India Syringes and Needles Manufacturers Association. They bring up industry issues and talk to the government. In the automotive space, you've seen SIAM, which is the association for all the automobiles. In the telecom space, you have COAI. They're working together to frame messages. And, I was surprised that some of these associations were born because PR consultants advised the companies that you need to create an association like this and work together so that your messages are delivered to the stakeholders. And in this case, the policymakers. In fact, with these two ideas, I wanted to ask a question to all the panelists. And the question is, in your current role, do you see any opportunity for you to partner with competitors in your communication campaigns?
So I think the opportunity is there. I'll give you a recent example. In my previous organization, we sort of, and these are mostly around the big issues, the ones that, can impact things like policy or make a change. I don't think that these partnerships, especially in the tech world, are a lot about tech. I think they're more about collaborating to solve the bigger issues. A good example is that we collaborated with a competitor in my past organization to do an announcement on combating climate change and how we are partnering to, let's say, as an example, install solar panels and take electricity to the villages and renewable energy to the villages and all of that. So I think the opportunity is immense. I would still question whether that opportunity to collaborate will lie in the domain of business as such, but at a macro level, the industry or things like climate change that address a bigger social cause, I think there's good opportunity there.
Thank you, IBM and Weber, for putting this together and giving PRmoment the opportunity for this very interesting conversation. Thank you to Reena, the Weber team, Valerie, Priyanka. Thank you to my team, Soumya, who's done a great job behind the scene. Pritha, thank you so much, all of you.